Death, taxes, the Kansas City Chiefs and Taylor Swift pulling out devil magic to win every game ever, and Scott Boras leaving MLB teams with headaches. I mean, he's got to be so despised by all these teams, and I totally understand the idea that players have the right and freedom to get as much money as they possibly can. That they've worked their whole life for this, and there's no problem with it, and I totally agree with that, of course. But it takes two to tango. You have the privilege to get as much money as you can try to get, but you don't have the right to get as much money from whatever team you want, because teams also have every right to not feel the need or want to pay a player what they don't feel he's worth, and the Mets are a perfect representation of that. I mean, Steve Cohen is made of money. You think this guy gives a crap about losing some money? Obviously not. So when he is refusing to cave into paying a player, it's a preposterous ask from Scott Boras and the player. And it also says more when it's a player who's been a Met his whole career. This isn't some player completely on the outside the Mets want. No, Pete Alonso and the Mets, of course, have a relationship prior to this. And the more this offseason continues, the worse it makes him and Boras, of course, look. Because when Steve Cohen publicly calls you out, yeah, not ideal. Really quick, as always, if you're part of the 53% of viewers not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button if you enjoy the videos, as the Mets just recently had their Fan Fest event, one a ton of players were at, current and past players, along with the front office, Steve Cohen, the owner. Mostly everyone was there, and during a panel where Cohen was on stage with general manager David Stearns and manager Carlos Mendoza, fans started to chant a mix of "We Want Pete" and "Pete Alonso," which is obviously a pretty big elephant in the room. And Cohen decided to respond to said chant in a very telling way. Watch.
All right. All right. All right. So, guys, let's hold that for the end, okay? We've made a significant offer to Pete, and what Davis says correct. He's entitled to go out and explore his market, and that's what he's doing. Personally, this has been an exhausting conversation and negotiation. I mean, Soto was tough. This is worse. Okay? A lot of it is, we've made a significant. I don't like the structures that are being presented back to us. I think it's highly asymmetric against us, and I feel strongly about it. I will never say no. There's always the possibility. But the reality is, we're moving forward, and, we continue to bring in players. As we continue to, bring in players, the reality is, it becomes harder to fit Pete into what is a very expensive group of players that we already have. And that's where we are. And I'm being brutally honest. I don't like the negotiations. I don't like what's been presented to us. Listen, maybe that changes, and certainly, I'll always stay flexible. If it stays this way, I think we're going to have to get used to the fact that, we may have to go forward and with the existing players that we have.
Okay, first off, I just want to acknowledge how awesome Steve Cohen is. He's rich, but not cheap. He's in this to simply win, not be a businessman. And he says it how it is. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. This kind of transparency is always so refreshing to see anyone of his wealth and power to have, as you can't say the same for most owners just in baseball alone. He's not speaking like a politician. He's speaking like a person, and whether you love or hate the Mets, you gotta respect that. Now, it was also pretty interesting. He kind of threw a jab at the Juan Soto sweepstakes. He wasn't calling out Juan Soto. Obviously, more so Boras, as the Soto situation worked out. He's on their team. They love him now. But you can definitely sense there was some angst in those negotiations. I mean, this is at least the second time Cohen has alluded to that being the case. Watch.
It wasn't an easy process. Okay, I mean, there were moments when... there were so many emotions. It took about 10 days, and just so many emotions to get to where we got to. But I always say it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And we got there.
So when Cohen says what I showed earlier, when he said Soto was tough and this was worse, you can see what's going on here. The Juan Soto talks were probably very headache-inducing, but because it was Juan Soto we're talking about here, Cohen did everything he could to seal the deal. But when you're talking about Pete Alonso, I mean, there's only really so much you can put up with. Not that Alonso isn't a good player. He is, and has been his whole career, but compared to 26-year-old phenom Juan Soto, Cohen and the Mets most definitely don't feel as eager to go through the headaches to get a deal done with a 31-year-old first baseman whose bat speed and average exit velocity has declined. It would be nice to bring Alonso back, I'm sure, but at what cost? You can overpay for Soto, not Alonso. And this is something Scott Boras just can't seem to understand. I mean, no matter how much you want to compare your client to Prince Fielder's 9-year contract, no matter how much you feel Alonso's worth, this is where it gets to a point where he's screwing Alonso over, and Alonso, of course, plays a part in this too, and screwing himself. I'm sure he prefers the Mets. I mean, obviously, why else would he go back with an offer to them? That's not usually how it works. But he also has to realize how not great his offer looks for the Mets to take on. He and Boras rejected a 3-year deal worth about $70 million and countered that with another 3-year offer, but with a lot more money per year and overall, which the Mets are not about. And not because they're being cheap, they're the last team you can call that. No, it's called basic understanding of not wanting to overpay for a player who's not as vital compared to others. And like Cohen said, he's very against the structure of what Alonso and Boras are asking for, that it just benefits Alonso a lot more than it benefits the team. And yeah, you can really tell the anger coming out here, kind of like a screw you to both Alonso and Boras, and it's hard to see it any other way. He's pissed. It gave me these kind of vibes.
Go fuck yourself. Is that clear?
He let Boras get away with a lot in the Soto talks, but again, it's Juan Soto. It's worth it, at least in theory. But Alonso, the Mets don't need him. They plan on moving Mark Vientos to first base now. I mean, they have a lot of internal young options they can work with to replace Alonso being the set first baseman. And again, they kind of got a guy named Juan Soto now. Like, come on, they're in a great spot as an organization. There's no pressure on the Mets here to take Alonso back. It's the other way around. I hope Alonso gets the deal he wants, but he can't expect to just get whatever deal he wants. It doesn't really work that way. But as for Cohen and the Mets, he's coming out and saying he's not going to deal with this shit anymore, and I respect the hell out of that. It'd be cool if more owners were like that. Let me know your thoughts, and thank you for watching.